And we are live for another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside, as always, by my co-host, Andrew Johnson. And Johnson, it's been a little bit of time since we were here on the podcast recording, as you know, we had some scheduling conflicts, a wedding to attend this past weekend, and we kind of missed some of what happened in Week 3 of college football. Now leading it to Week number 4, which just happened this past weekend. So here on the show today, we're going to be breaking down what happened in Week 4 with a little bit of tie-in as to well as what happened in Week 3, because there were some crazy games that did happen in Week 3 that we didn't really get a chance to talk about. And probably the most stacked slate we've gotten so far in this college football season. I know Week 1 we had a bunch of highly contested games. This upcoming Week number 5, a lot of games on the docket this week. There are some games that we're not even going to be talking about on the Mushing Hour that are also pretty highly staked, but there are a lot of big games to talk about this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, lots of highly touted games coming up. We have some real ranked matchups coming up, and we had some real big ranked matchups last week. Really, just one really big match rank up that was a giant disappointment last week. And we can go straight into it. Let's talk about Texas Tech, Utah. And everyone thought this was going to be a close game, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Texas
Yeah,
Tech blows out Utah. It was close for maybe the first half.
first half, yeah.
And the second that fourth, and then nothing happened in the third quarter. And the second that fourth quarter started, it was it's like Texas Tech realized they were playing for their, I don't want to say their Big 12 title hopes, because this early in the season, that's it's a must win, especially if you're in the Big 12. If you want that college football playoff berth later in the season, you're probably looking for the sole bid out of the Big 12 because of the rankings right now. But yeah, they realized, okay, we're playing for our title hopes here, and they just put uh, Utah responded once, and then after that, it was all Texas Tech. It's 3 straight touchdowns to end the game, and wasn't even that impressive quarterback play. It was basic quarterback play, got it done, and it was more just, it was more just, I want to say receivers making big plays out there. But Nick, take us through the game.
Yeah, I mean, this was realistically, these were two of the teams that I mentioned in our preview of the season that I believed were the best two teams in the entire Big 12. I actually have both of these teams making the college football playoff. I figured that these two teams will probably obviously going to play their game this season. I think they're going to play again, in my opinion, in the Big 12 championship. I think that's just how good they are. And I think no matter what, even if they were to lose the second game, that they still get into CFP depending on what happens in the rankings because of all the other teams beating up on each other. But the way Texas Tech looked in this game, they looked like the most dominant team right now in that entire conference because going into the season, this team was mentioned about, bringing in all these transfers. They were very active in the portal, and this was their first big test because they really hadn't played anyone yet. They're playing a Utah team that's been playing pretty good to start the season. A lot of hype going on this Utah team going into the year. And as you mentioned, this was just an offensive, it was pretty much an offensive struggle in the first half of both teams. A lot of turnovers for both quarterbacks, Devin Dampier and Baron Morton. They both had 2 interceptions in this game. Morton, in fact, even gets injured for this Red Raider offense. So Will Hammond had to finish the rest of the game for this Red Raider offense and did a great job. 13 to 16 for 169 yards, 2 passing touchdowns. I think the big concern for Utah is that their offense just never really clicked in this game to what we saw the first 3 weeks of the season. Devin Dampier, who a lot of people, including myself, were very high on going into the year, really struggled in this game. And now for Utah, it's pretty much a wake-up call for them because now you drop to 3-1. Obviously, nothing's over yet in this conference. Utah pretty much, I don't want to say has to run the table to make it to the Big 12 championship, but they can't really afford a second loss in conference play, in my opinion. And we're just going to have to see how this team responds from a loss like this because it's pretty much a gut punch, losing in the fashion that they did. And for Texas Tech, this has got to be the first time since probably since the Michael Crabtree era where they have to feel really, really good about where their team is currently heading right now. They're 4-0 right now on the season. Obviously, a big conference win to start the season. And they've got potential CFP hopes now looming for the rest of the season.
Now the question is, if Texas Tech makes it to the college football playoffs, are they going to allow the use of tortillas to be thrown onto the
I
field?
hope
That's
so.
my question. That's
I
what
hope
I'm
so.
looking forward to.
I think it'd be a downright outrage if they didn't allow that. I don't know if you. I'm sure you agree with that sentiment.
I would agree. And you know what? Also, I'd agree with Nick. The statement that Oklahoma looked dominant over Auburn this past weekend.
Yeah, Jackson Arnold did not have a fun reunion going back to Norman, Oklahoma this past week. The former Oklahoma quarterback, obviously last year was a really bad year for him. Got benched at one point for that Sooner offense. And he transferred to Auburn this past offseason. And they made their matchup with Oklahoma this past weekend, so Arnold gets his return. And, he didn't look too terrible in this game. Both offenses really kind of struggled. This is actually a more defensive game that, when we obviously made our picks off the air, we made our picks during the week. And I had this game going over. I thought this was going to be a little bit more of a high scoring affair. I thought that because of the two quarterback play, I think that was going to be the reason why I took the over. And the defenses really stood out in this game. And most importantly, Oklahoma's defense stood out in this game. 10 sacks on their former starting quarterback, Jackson Arnold, including a game winning safety in the end zone that put them up 7, which for you, Johnson, was crucial because the 6.5 spread did hit because of that late safety in the fourth quarter. The Sooners do get the win 24-17. The biggest story, though, from this game, Johnson, is going to be that John Mateer, the starting quarterback for Oklahoma, who was a lot of people's favorite for the Heisman these last couple weeks, he did suffer an injury to his throwing hand in this game. He's going to be out for a couple weeks, and that's a brutal loss for Oklahoma. I think the initial timeline right now is 3 games for him. So if that is the case, he's going to miss their next upcoming game against Kent State. The most important game he's going to miss right now is the game against Texas. And that's a big game for the Sooners team. And then they go to South Carolina. So, obviously, the Kent State game is a game you should have easily. The 2 after that, going to be really tough for that Sooners offense. They're going to really need to rely on this defense more than ever if they're going to have a chance to pull off those wins.
Yeah, he goes from Heisman hopeful to on the injured reserve list. So we're going to wish him the best of luck now, and hopefully we see him again. I don't know when we'll see him, but
I would think after
we
the
don't
South Carolina game. I think
yeah,
that's
they don't
where
really
they're
have an
hoping for.
official timetable right now, but I'm imagining it'll be a couple of weeks.
Yeah, the surgery was actually finished today, so that's the good sight. I think the timeline was 3 weeks, so we'll have to see. I think if that's
Maybe
the
you see
case,
him week 8,
right?
maybe week 9.
They're hoping for the game against Ole Miss to be the game he comes back from,
Yeah,
and at
so if they
that
could
point, who
just
knows where they're going to be?
really right the ship here, right? Because obviously, okay, he's not going to be the Heisman, right? He's going to miss too much time. However, you have to take a look at Oklahoma's schedule right now. They're, spoiler alert, they're, in the top 12. So if the team, if it ended today, they'd be there. So Kent State, that's a great game to get. I don't want to say there's never really a great time to get injured, but if it was a time to get injured, it's going to be one. You're going to want to want it. You're going to want it.
It's good for the backup quarterback because he's going to have a chance to fully learn what he needs to do for the weeks
Because
after.
not only does he get a week off to learn the offense a little bit better and take reps, first reps with the practice squad, he's playing. He's going to be playing Kent State, so that means it's really he's got 2 or 3 weeks. And again, you don't want to look ahead to come play Texas. And you're going to be playing at Texas. No one beginning of the year had you winning at Texas. And it's the Red River Shootout. It's a big game. So if you can really get him back for South Carolina, because that's that's over 3 weeks at that point.
Yeah.
You might be okay. Because if you come back, you run the table, you beat, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri, LSU, which is way harder than it sounds. There's probably a 5% chance they do that. But if they get a lot of them, they're still in college football playoff.
I think
right here you can lose against Texas, and then you can lose one more game against Alabama or LSU. Tennessee, all those fun ones. So you have 2 losses, assuming you're going to lose one to Texas. You have one the rest of the season when you have your starting quarterback. So hey, just gonna go undefeated with your starting quarterback. Easier said than done, though.
It's more than likely going to be Michael Hawkins Jr., who, funny enough, going back to Jackson Arnold, who was started for Auburn in this game, he was the guy that replaced Jackson Arnold last season when Arnold got benched. So it's probably going to be him that's going to be the starter for the Sooners the next couple of weeks. We'll have to see what he does because he was very up and down in the relief time after Jackson Arnold got benched. So a little bit of tying it into what happened in this game, but Michael Hawkins Jr. is going to be the Sooners starting quarterback. in that big game against Texas in a couple weeks. So we'll see. It's gonna be a lot of pressure is gonna be put on him. That's for sure. But speaking of pressure, Johnson, how about a lot of pressure in the Big Ten? Because think about what happened this past. So we obviously didn't get to talk about this game last week, but this was probably one of the biggest non top three teams Big Ten wise game I've seen. And what I mean by that is we had a Big Ten game that was between two ranked teams going this past weekend that didn't involve Michigan, didn't involve Penn State, it didn't involve Ohio State. You obviously had Oregon now, but this is going back to the original Big Ten because these are two original Big Ten teams as well. You had number 9 Illinois going into Indiana to take on number 19 Indiana, and I mean, this was a wrap from basically the first quarter being over. Indiana, dare I say, Johnson, this is a team that made the college football playoff last season. They look even better than the team that made the college football playoff last year. They put up 63 points on the Illini and win this game 63-10. This was an absolute mauling by the Hoosiers against the Illini in this game.
Yeah, I wasn't really a big fan of his Illini team. Nothing personally against them, but going into the year, I said, okay, I think they're a little bit overrated. And, I know it's off the air picks, but I took Indiana in this game because, I thought it'd be easy. And I didn't expect it to be this easy, though.
I think I gave Illinois
I expect the game to be like, okay, like it's going to be like a good, like a 24-10 win for Indiana, 2-touchdown win. You're at home, whatever, get demoralized.
Right.
It's hard to win on the road in college, et cetera, et cetera. But this was a complete getting outclassed. Like this, by I don't even know how to put this into words. It was just otherworldly what Indiana was doing. And Indiana was a team that we all kind of said, okay, they're fake last year, yada, 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 whatever. Now it's kind of like, okay, maybe Indiana is really, really good. And because they have all the NIL money flowing in there now, they're really investing in football, and they have a small window to get this done because of the way the system is changing next year. So this Indiana team might make the college football playoffs. The way they looked on Saturday, they might be better than Oregon.
I'm glad you brought up the NIL because it really ties into what this game was, the biggest factor in this game, which is Fernando Mendoza, the starting quarterback, who was at Cal last year, did show some flashes for Cal, but that program was really never realistically going to go much with the roster that they had. So you put Mendoza on a team that made the college football playoff last season, and in my opinion, is a better quarterback than Rourke, who was the starting quarterback for Indiana last year. And look at what he did in this game. 21-23, 267, 5 touchdown passes. I mean, you cannot X much more out of your quarterback in this game to only throw 2 incompletions and have 5 passing touchdowns. Right now, he's the favorite to win the Heisman. That's how good he's been so far. He's got 14 touchdown passes to 0 picks so far in the 4 games the Hoosiers have played this season.
Yeah, crazy when you think about that. And speaking of crazy, do you want to talk about Clemson dropping the 1-3?
Couldn't
talk about the Orangemen.
Hey, how about Syracuse? We'll look it up, right?
I mean, yeah, I guess hey Nick, if you said Syracuse, if you had a monkey paw, right, and you said, "Oh, I wish Syracuse would be better than Clemson this year," and then you realize Clemson's gonna be 1-3, how would you feel about that?
I would have called you crazy, and I would have called myself crazy. Because listen, when I saw this obviously wasn't a game we had on our docket. It's more the fact that how bad Clemson's been so far this season. Let's remind everyone too. Clemson was the team. If I'm not mistaken, you also had them as your ACC champion, right?
I did. I thought they were going to run the table. I'm very surprised how they performed.
We've both had them as the ACC champion. I even, in fact, had them as my national champion. That's how crazy this has been. So I'm going to mark it down that my national championship pick is done. They can't. There's no chance they have no chance in hell. And it's just weird what's happening because Syracuse in this game jumped out to an early lead and they never surrendered it. And this, as a fan of the team, there was a lightning delay going into halftime. I'm thinking, okay, this is where Clemson is going to finally wake up. They're going to finally turn around their season maybe and get things going. And it just never happened in the second half. Syracuse's defense played really strong in this game. Their offense was firing on all cylinders. Outside of Steve Angeli getting injured in this game, they did a phenomenal job offensively in this one throughout the entirety of this one, jumping out to a 24-7 lead. at Clemson, I thought was unheard of, but it happened. And listen, I'll take a 3-1 record. I sucks about the injured quarterback, but we'll see what Ricky Collins, the transfer from LSU, can do. But the biggest story of the game is obviously Clemson and what's happened to them because they're 1-3 now. Klubnik has looked like a shell of himself from a guy that was a preseason Heisman favorite. I think you had him. Did you have him as your Heisman, or did I have him as my Heisman?
I had him as a Heisman. I had him
You had him as your Heisman
favorite.
winner,
Yeah. I had him, and I had Lenora Sellers, who
yeah.
unfortunately
He got injured.
that's not looking hot either. But he was looking good.
Yeah.
Looking good. But unfortunately, it was Klubnik and then Lenora Sellers, and you had Arch Manning and Jeremiah Love.
Yeah,
so
we won't.
Not looking too hot for either of us right
Jeremiah
now.
Love was a long shot. I was hoping Notre Dame was going to utilize him more, and they just haven't. I don't know what they're doing with that. And that was a game that we didn't even get to talk about, that Notre Dame Texas A&M game. I mean, what a thriller in South Bend that game was. We'll talk about that a little bit in a little bit when we get to the AP Top 25. But my question for you is, where does Clemson go from here now with being 1-3? Like, what happens with Dabo? What happens with this program? Like, this is uncharted territory for them, probably since Dabo came here. They haven't really.
No, it's going to depend. Listen. Georgia Tech looks like they're a good program, right? So if I have a loss against Georgia Tech, right?
Okay.
So Georgia Tech looks like they're okay. They're beating up on the bad teams and yada yada, whatever. Okay, cool. LSU we know is good. We know LSU is a dominant program. They have a big win over Florida, and obviously they went into Clemson, which is pretty tough to do, and pick up a victory there. So we know LSU is good, right? We know LSU is good. We know Georgia Tech is at least.
Let's
decent,
not forget,
right?
they struggled against Troy even in the one win they have. They were down in that game.
So this is what I'm going to say. If they're at North Carolina this week, which will be on Cartoon Network at 10 a.m.
It really should be on Cartoon Network. I'm
sorry, 2 weeks. So they have the bye. So
yeah, they have a bye
Bill Belichick is going to get ready. He's got 2 weeks to go face North Carolina.
This was a game that at the beginning of the year was penciled for different reasons. Now it's penciled as being bad.
It's penciled as being it's going to be on Boomerang.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. You think you can get wins against North Carolina, BC, and SMU, and that ends your October, right?
Okay.
So if you can get wins against those guys, you're 4-3, right?
Right.
And you should be able to beat Duke, right? That's a given.
I don't know if it is. I think right now, Johnson, I'm not even kidding. I don't think any game right now is a gimme for Clemson. I think it's. I think it's that bad.
In the beginning of the season,
at the beginning of the year, right? Absolutely. These were supposed to be gimme. Like, listen, I'm a fan.
So
of
the next four should be the next.
Right. What I was gonna say is Syracuse. This was supposed to be a gimme game for them after losing Georgia Tech. They were 17.5-point favorites in this game, and they lost by 13.
Hey, I mean, Q's could run the table here now.
I'm not gonna get myself overhyped for it. I think the injury to quarterback's gonna kill them. But listen, even if they were not to win another game this season, just beating Clemson is more than enough for me. I will take it.
All right, they've given me some bad memories. FBI hear that he said he's okay for 3-win season for Syracuse. Lock him in.
I'm just saying. I wasn't. Listen, I told you at the beginning of the year, if Syracuse went 6-6, I would be okay with that because we lost so much from last season. The fact that they're already at 3-1, I'll take that.
So
I will take that.
So here's the thing: they have to play Florida State, and they're going to play South Carolina. So those are going to be the games.
Don't count out Louisville either.
Yeah. Well, whatever. But I'm saying, if they run the table and they beat Florida State and then they beat South Carolina, I mean, listen, it's going to be a lot. But if they start losing North Carolina, BC, SMU, I think you at the end of October, if you're 1-2 in those games, the AD kind of knocks on the door of Dabo and says, "Hey, Dabo, end of the year, we can give you the option to either resign or we're going to fire you because we're looking for our next coach at this point." And Dabo, he can take it from there. If he's 3-0 for October, I think the AD gives him another shot. If he loses, if he gets for October with all the wins and then he loses to Duke and Florida State back to back, he's gone.
Well, they're not going to fire him.
He's not going to get fired mid-season, but I really believe he needs to go 5-0 in his next couple games to kind of guarantee that he's going to be there next season because he's got to get at least he's got to get at least sniff a bowl game for him to have a safe job. That's my opinion here.
I think the biggest concern also is that he's not adapting to the current state of college football. Because
That's a
remember
part of
that,
the conversation because he's not using the
right?
portal. That was
He's
gonna be the
not using
second
the
part of
portal.
my point.
They like we remember that stat I said to you last year. I said there were three teams in college football that did not use the transfer portal, did not have one transfer portal player. Do you remember those teams?
I know Clemson was one of them.
Well, obviously Clemson was one of them. Do you remember the other two?
I do not.
They were both military schools.
Ah, yes, that makes sense.
I think it was I think it was either Navy and Air. Or no, I think it was Army and Air Force. I think it was those two.
Yeah, that would make sense.
It was. It was regardless. It was military schools with Clemson. That's how. That's why. That's where it's concerning because they're like. Don't get me wrong. Getting 5-star athletes or whatever and recruiting, that's all fine and dandy. But you have to adapt and get some of these big time players in the portal that come out because look at what schools like we just talked about Indiana, what they're doing right now because of the transfer portal. They are making it work right now with transfer portal players. Look at I know this is a completely different sport. Look at us with St. John's. Like with them going into the transfer portal, that has revitalized that program. You have to adapt to what college sports is right now. You might not like what college sports is doing with the transfer portal. You have to utilize it eventually. You have no choice. You just can't be. You can't be
Yeah, no, you're totally right, and
stagnant
you have
and be
to
stubborn about
adapt
it.
to. I don't want to say adapt or die, but that's what it's kind of like.
Right, because it's gonna get to the point where at the end of the year, let's say even if like they do decent enough at the end of the season, they're gonna say to Dabo, we really need you to start looking at the portal because it's just not working. This year was supposed to be a potential national championship season, and we're playing in like the Independence Bowl at best right now. Like that's how bad it is. It really could come down to that at the end of the year.
Hey, I mean, it is what it is at this point, right?
Yeah, that's all you can say about it. There really is nothing you can do about it. But let's go into the AP poll, Johnson. There's enough talk about Clemson. Obviously, their season pretty much looks done from here. But let's talk about the teams that are still alive in the AP right now and have chances of making the college football playoff. And you look at the polls, a lot of new rankings. We had two teams drop from the rankings, that being Utah and Auburn. That led to two new teams being ranked into the top 25, that being TCU and BYU, two teams from the Big 12. Other rankings, we saw Illinois dropping 14 spots. Makes sense after that the really bad loss to Indiana in the fashion that they did. We saw Indiana jump up 8 spots. Texas Tech jumped up 5. Oklahoma now is into the top 10 after their last win over Auburn. Miami now is the new number 2 team in the country. They beat Florida this past weekend. That, depending on what happens in State College this week, will more than likely be a 1-week stay for them at number 2. I would expect the Oregon and Penn State winner to be the new number 2 team in the country, or maybe even LSU or Georgia, because they all have big games. In fact, 3 to 6 all have a really impressive game this week. So no matter what's going to happen, someone's probably going to overtake Miami as the number 2 team in the country. And other than that, the only really other big movements we saw are Missouri and USC move up a couple spots. Bama dropped 3 spots, but they didn't play last week. They have a big game, of course, that we'll talk about in a little bit. What really stood out to you, though, from the top 25, or if there was anything?
Aggies going to the top 10.
That's also true. I forgot to say that. I forgot to say that.
Aggies
Well,
to the top 10. I'm very surprised. I think Mike Elko's done an excellent job, and I said it was a good hire. I know he only had a couple of years at Duke there, but I said if there's, I think he was given that the academic standards he had to adhere to at Duke and the size of the program overall, he did a good job. And I'm very surprised that Aggies are ranked above Texas this year. That I'm shocked about.
yeah, they moved up 1 spot. They were ranked in the top 10 last week after their win over Notre Dame that we talked about a little bit early on. And as I mentioned, it was a phenomenal game between those two teams in South
I
Bend.
also want to
Yeah.
say I'm very surprised that Notre Dame is still ranked because the AP poll voters don't know what they're doing. And I'm very happy that Vanderbilt is 49 votes behind Alabama right now for 17th place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Alabama is also 3 points behind Georgia Tech. So to me, this is like 2009 NCAA basketball rankings right now.
It really is.
15.
So if you had said at the beginning of the year, yeah, Georgia Tech, Vanderbilt are going to be even. Listen, Illinois might have lost, but Illinois and Indiana are like all top 25 teams. You would have been like, what are you even talking about right now? Like what's
yeah?
what
This
are
is what
you
you mean. What is this? 2011 NCAA basketball, or is it before Jimmer broke?
Yeah.
Kind of broke out. You have BYU 25, and Notre Dame 22. It's like, okay, it's like we're going back to the old conference. Vanderbilt's good. Like maybe
And
I forget what player was at Georgia Tech. Oh, was Jeff Teague? No, Jeff
Jeff
Teague was
Teague.
Wake Forest, right? Jeff
Yes,
Teague was Wake
yes.
Forest. I'm thinking, who am I thinking at Georgia Tech?
Georgia Tech.
I know they had what? They had Bosch Fair, right?
Is it bad that the only Georgia Tech alumni I can think of is right now
I
it's
mean,
Calvin Johnson and Roman Reigns? Is that
no,
bad?
no, no, no. There's some good. There's
No,
some good
I
basketball
know. I
players
just
there.
I'm
I'm
blanking right now.
thinking off the top of my head. I can think of Grand Theft Alvarado, which was just there.
Yes.
Um,
Was it Bosch obviously was there. Yeah, I don't know, I forgot. Was Derek
obviously, I
Favors?
think might have been Derek Favors. Yeah, it might have been Derek Favors.
Javaris Crittenton. Ooh, there's some names.
Yeah, so I'm thinking. Oh, Jarrett Jack, Amon Shumpert. Was Amon
Yeah.
Shumpert back playing for Georgia Tech right now? It's like 2010.
I forgot Montrumper went there. I forgot he went there.
It was a basketball powerhouse for a long time, but we're getting off
Yeah.
topic here.
Yeah, we are getting off topic. But yeah, I think the good thing also is you look at some of the rankings in the top 25 too. And I mentioned earlier on we have a loaded slate this week that we're gonna talk about. I think we have I think I put 8 games in our mushing hour for this week, so it's a lot. But there are some games that we are not even going to be talking about. There are going to be some big ones. Tomorrow night, Florida State and Virginia, I think is going to be an interesting game. TCU and Arizona State is going to be interesting because of how the Big 12 is. Notre Dame, we talked about it earlier. I mean, we didn't really talk about it because of the A&M after the A&M game, but they lost that game. They can't afford to lose another game this season. Their only hope of making the CFP is that they win out, and they need teams to lose out. So they have a big game against Arkansas this upcoming weekend on the road. That should be interesting. Arizona, Iowa State is a fun game as well to look out for. And BYU going to Colorado on the road at night. That's an interesting game too. There's a lot of big games this week, but as I mentioned, Johnson, we can't really fit them all this week with the way that this slate's going. 8 game. Let me make sure I have that right. Is it 8 games that I have? Yes, it is 8. I can't do my math right now. 8 games on the docket for this week. It's a loaded slate. If you want me to start, I can start. If you want to go for it, you go for the first
Please
game.
start, Nick.
All right.
Please start.
Let's start in the Big Ten again. And Illinois last week, bad game for them. Like you would hope for them, maybe it only goes up from here. We'll see what happens this upcoming weekend. They're at home, number 23 in the country, taking on number 21 USC. The Trojans are on the road. They are a 6.5-point favorite. The over/under is 60.5 for this game.
Oh man, give me Illinois plus 6.5. I think they finally get together. At least cover right now at home. I don't think they're gonna win, but they're gonna cover.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not you don't know USC nice win last week against Michigan State, who's still rebuilding. I don't see where the 6.5 is only because Illinois got destroyed by Indiana, and I think Indiana is far and ahead of what USC is right now. So I hate to double down and go with you on the mush, but I like the Illini again this week. I'm going to take them to plus 6.5. Hopefully it doesn't backfire like it did last week. So I'll go with them in that game. What about our next game, the Big Ten?
We have number 11 Indiana going to Iowa to take on the Hawkeyes. Iowa is a underdog at home. The favorite is Indiana minus 8.5. Over under at 48.5. Give me Iowa plus 8.5 here because I think they cover at home. Kind of the same logic. Indiana's way better, but I don't think they're gonna win by 9 or more points.
I feel like anytime there's a big game with Iowa, you probably take the under. So I'm going to go with the under in this game, and I'm going to make a bold prediction. I'm not going to put it on my card because we never really done that with player props. I think this is the week that Mendoza throws an interception, though, because we know Iowa and how fundamentally defense they are for the majority of their university's history. I think they will get some pressure on Mendoza this week. I think they'll force him to throw an interception. If it does happen, I'm just saying it's not on my card, but it'd be pretty funny if he did do that. I'll go with the under nonetheless in this game. I do think the Hoosiers get the job done. I just think they're that good right now. But 8.5 is a lot for me to take, and I don't know if I trust Iowa to cover that either. So I'll go with the under in that one. Another big game in the Big Ten. We have the number 1 team in the country, Ohio State, going on the road to take on Washington. Ohio State, a 7.5 point favorite. The over under 51.5.
Yeah, give me OSU minus 7.5 here. This opened at minus 14.5, but the
I
public was
know.
hammering that. So give me
Yeah.
minus 7.5 here.
Yeah. Washington is not that bad. Like, they haven't played anyone really realistically this so far this season, but Ohio State, they're the defending champions. I know, this is probably their first real road test so far of the season. They haven't played a road game yet. But I'm with you on this game as well. I'm going to go with Ohio State minus the 7.5. I just don't think Washington is there yet. They're still rebuilding and trying to get it better in the Big Ten after making that national championship game a couple years ago. So I'm with you on that game as well. I got Ohio State minus 7.5 too.
Now we have my Texas A&M Aggies at home. The Auburn Tigers are going to be visiting. Uh, Man, feels like a game I went to a couple of years ago.
It was.
Aggies at home minus 6.5 point favorites. 52.5 is the slated over under. Give me Aggies minus 6.5 here. This is an easy one. Auburn's a great
Mm.
team, but give me Aggies to win by a touchdown.
I, I'm going to go with Auburn to cover. I think Aggies win the game, but I think it's by a last second field goal. I think Auburn is not that bad. Arnold is a good enough quarterback that will keep them in the game. Their offensive line just has to play a lot. It just has to do somewhat better than what they did against Oklahoma because you can't give up 10 sacks and win. The fact that they were even in that game was a miracle. I think they can keep it close. So I will take the Auburn Tigers to cover the 6.5 on the road, but Texas A&M I think does get the job done at the end of the night. How about this matchup in the SEC, Johnson? Number 15 Tennessee on the road to Starkville to take on Mississippi State. The Volunteers a 7.5 point favorite. 62.5 is the over under for this game. A lot of points.
Did you say 17.5 point favorites or
Seven and a
seven and a
half.
half?
Seven
Yeah,
and a half.
yeah. So yeah, I'm taking Mississippi State plus 7.5. I don't think they're gonna win by more than a touchdown away from home. So give me Mississippi State plus 7.5.
This game opened at 9.5 too. So I think people are starting to recognize that Mississippi State is getting a little bit better. So I think that's something to note. Tennessee, obviously, we didn't talk about that game, Johnson, either a couple weeks ago, but a heartbreaking loss to Georgia, a game that they probably should have won, and they missed a field goal at the end of regulation, and they missed a game time field goal in overtime that cost them this game, and that lost to the Bulldogs. We'll see how they respond since they got the win last week against UAB. I'm going to take Tennessee to. I think I'm going to take the Tennessee to cover this game. I don't know if Mississippi State. I know they got that big win against Arizona State earlier in the year. I just think Tennessee is just on a different level right now. I'm going to go with Tennessee to cover the 7.5 in that matchup on the road.
All right, so next game we have LSU, number 4 in the country, going into Ole Miss to take on number 13 Rebels over here. Ole Miss is a 1.5 point favorite at home. 56.5 is the slated over under. Top 4 team. Brian Kelly has proved himself in a large game. Give me LSU to cover here. LSU plus 1.5.
I was actually shocked that LSU was the underdog in this game. I don't know
Yeah,
if
that's why I'm
you're the
taking it.
same. Mississippi State. Oh, I'm sorry, Ole Miss. I'm mixing up the Mississippi schools. Ole Miss hasn't played bad. They obviously destroyed Tulane last week, a team that you and I both thought was going to cover that game. And I look at it like this: I gotta trust LSU right now over the two. I have them in my college football playoff, and I just think at the end of the day they're probably going to win this game. I will take them to cover just to avoid a money line disaster, and they don't win the game. But I do think the LSU out of the two is the better team, so I will go with the Tigers in that matchup as well. Our third mush of the week. It's not looking good, Jonathan, so far for this week for these teams. How about this SEC showdown? Number 17 Alabama at number 5 Georgia. Georgia 3.5 point favorite over under 53.5.
Alabama plus 3.5. They're going to cover here. It's got that big game feel, and Kalen DeBoer is honestly he's kind of playing for his life right now. So I think they're going to
Yeah,
cover.
I think if they lose this game, you pretty much knock them out of the CFP entirely. I don't know if there's really a scenario where they can make it unless they maybe win out the rest of the year. I guess that's probably the only scenario they have. So Bama plus 3.5 is your pick.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to go on the opposite side. I'm going to go with Georgia minus a 3.5. And I don't know if you've been noticing, but I've at least made it a thing for me to make one double pick per week for both college and NFL to try to get my record up a little bit. I'm going to go with Georgia, the cover, and I'm going to take the over. I expect a lot of points in this game between these two teams. So give me Georgia 3.5 and the over in this highly touted SEC matchup between those two teams.
And in the game of the week, we have number 6 Oregon going to Penn State, number 3 in the country for the whiteout. Penn State is a 3.5 point favorite. 52.5 is the slated over under. With all that being said, give me Oregon plus 3.5.
I don't know what the wording is for this game because, and I don't know if you agree with me on this. Does it feel like that this game is more important for Penn State than Oregon?
Way more important for Penn State.
Because
way more important.
It feels like Oregon doesn't have any narratives right now. Like they could lose this game and everyone be like, okay, listen, they lost, but they're probably okay at the end of the day. Penn State loses this game. Yes, they probably still make the college football playoff, but it's going to continue the narrative of, oh, they still can't win that big game. And James Franklin, exactly. I think they have to. I think they need the game, Johnson. I think they need it more than ever. Drew Aller and company need to prove that they can be a legit national championship contender at the end of the day. I'm going to go with the opposite of this one, too, and I don't really like it, but I'm going to go with the Nittany Lions minus a 3.5 in this matchup. I think something's got to give. Franklin's got to win a big game at some point. I think just because of that, Oregon going to have to experience the whiteout. That is not an easy place to play in when they do a whiteout at night. And keep in mind, the whiteout that they did last year against Ohio State, that was a day game. It goes way much harder when you go onto the road at night at Happy Valley to take on a whiteout. I think it might be a little bit of a troubling game for the Ducks. So I'll go with Penn State to cover the 3.5 in that matchup.
All right, I think that's going to cover the mushing hour, Nick. And before we wrap it up, do you have anything to say?
I'm looking forward to this weekend. I know, I'm sure you're the same way. This is an unbelievable slate that we have, and even for the other games that we didn't really talk about that I mentioned a little bit before the mushing hour, the entire slate for this week is going to be insane. I'm looking forward to covering I would say a good majority of these games next week here on the show and seeing how it all unfolds and what our new top 25 is going to be, because it's going to be we're going to be at that point of the season where, we're 5 weeks in and we're almost near the halfway point of the season as well. We're getting there, Johnson. We're getting there.
Yeah, crazy that we're already so far into the season. Very, it feels like we just started.
I know. September is just ending, so we'll see how these teams go into October at the end of this upcoming weekend. But that's going to do it for this week's edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Huge week in college football upcoming here with a loaded slate, a couple of ranked matches with USC and Illinois, LSU at Ole Miss, Alabama at Georgia, and of course the big one, Oregon at Penn State. All big games, and we will recap those big games next week right here on the All Gas No Break Sports Show. This has been Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside by my co-host Andrew Johnson for the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week.